So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our panel today on how can games become a catalyst for innovation and strengthen EU competitiveness. My name is Anne Becker. I work for Video Games Europe. That's the European trade body representing the video game industry in Brussels, and I'll be your moderator for this session. For this panel, we will discuss where is the growth and competitiveness in the EU, who are Europe's real digital champions. We will discuss the role of games as catalysts for innovation, supporting also other industries. What is the role of policy to ensure that Europe does not miss out on opportunities that the video game sector can offer to drive growth, jobs, creativity, and innovation? So I don't know if everybody attended yesterday's political opening, but some of the key message there was that it's quite urgent to ensure that the video game sector has the capabilities to ensure that Germany and Europe does not lag behind in international competition. So to do so, to follow up on this discussion, we have a great panel with us today. And I'm pleased to introduce Renate Nicolai, Deputy Director General of the European Commission, Director General Communications, Network and Technology. Welcome, Renate. Henrik Lesser, President of the European Games Developers Federation and also CEO of Remote Control. Axel Voss, Member of the European Parliament and also a member of the EPP Group in the European Parliament. We also have Nick Appleyard. Nick is Head of Applications and Solutions Department, Commercialization, Industry and Competitiveness Directorate of the European Space Agency. I think you win in terms of longest title today. Also, and it's not just because I'm Swedish, but the Nordic countries are the Gamescom partner countries this year. So I'm particularly pleased to introduce Mats Berglund, Member of Parliament and Chair of the Cultural Affairs Committee of the Swedish Parliament, and Per Strömbäck, Managing Director of the Swedish Games Association. And Per, I think you're also coordinator of the ANGI Association, which represents the Nordic countries. So warm welcome to our panelists today. So we are at a very special moment of time of the EU institutions, and this panel is also, of course, about EU policy. We have a new European Parliament that has just been elected and will kick off work in the autumn. We will have a new European Commission later this year. We do not yet know the composition. So this is why we have asked Renate Nicolai to share with us some thoughts and insight to set the scene for this panel on how the Commission plans to amplify innovation and competitiveness of the European video games ecosystem. And following this, we will kick off the panel discussion. So, Renate, you work for DD Connect. It's probably one of the most exciting directorates in the European Commission because it has a very privileged position. It covers a multitude of policies ranging from infrastructure, networks, to technology, to content. It also runs important programs for supporting investment and funding, and of course also for the video game sector. So with this, Renate, I'll pass over to you for an introduction. You can come up here. Maybe you need the mic for this. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks for giving me the possibility to set a scene for this great panel. So the European Commission is at a relatively high level here at Gamescom for the second time. And this is a clear sign that in Europe, we really highly value both the cultural and the economic value of the contribution of the video game sector. The video game sector is a genuine art sector. It's an expression of the cultural talents that we have, an expression of who we are in terms of heritage and cultural kind of expression. but it's also of huge economic value in the billions, and more to come. We see that also in the cross-fertilization. I've just been at the Gamescom campus, and it's very telling to see how many other sectors are here to kind of, capture the talent and, spread the news about how the talents from the video games industry can be supportive of other sectors. The video games sector is at the cutting edge of innovation. It's a test bed and an incubator for new technologies, which are then being picked up elsewhere, which are used elsewhere, in schools and factories, on training grounds. So it will always be a catalyst for innovation, that's for sure. So where are we in Europe in terms of what we have done, for the sector, what we can contribute and what we should be doing next? I want to cover a couple of points. First, artificial intelligence. This is, when talking here in the booth with some of the actors and the exhibitors, it's very clear that the sector is in the process of kind of implementing Gen AI in their kind of, or AI in general, in their kind of programs. It's a tool, that's what they all say, but of course it's also an important revolutionary potential technological advancement. Here it's also a promise for the sector. It can reduce cost. It can enhance the quality of the games. It has a potential to help developers to bring larger, more immersive, and maybe also more personalized experience to future games. What have we done in Europe? We have done a double trick. We have presented or adopted the AI Act, which is a smart, future-oriented regulatory framework that is risk-based and principle-based and future-proof, that kind of protects us with guardrails against harmful kind of, applications. That's not the video sector, the video game sector. But it also is a living instrument, for instance, when it comes to Gen AI, in terms of developing together with the stakeholders, and that's what we are in the process of doing, codes of conduct to have the right approach also in the future on that important aspect. But we are not only doing regulation. This is accompanied by an innovation package where we want to really consciously support the development of use cases and AI applications in the EU, emerging applications of generative AI in Europe's strategic industrial sectors. We're taking in hands 4 billion euros for that, and the virtual worlds and the creative industry is one of these critical sectors. Second point I want to cover is skills. I learn with whoever I talk here that, the video game sector goes where the talent is. And that's better in Europe. It's getting better, but it's not yet perfect. And that's, I think, where Europe can also play a role. And that's why we have just put 55 million euros on the table just to develop advanced digital skills in higher education programs to help a variety of sectors, including the virtual worlds. And we have also decided in one of our programs to give additional training support in the Creative Funding Europe funding program, so that also the sectors can adjust. Because, of course, with technological advancements, we will have the issue of reskilling, and here the training aspect will be important. The third point I want to make is our digital rulebook. We have kind of, created rules with the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act that do two things. They make the online environment safer, and they make it fairer for competition. And when it comes to the fairer competition, that's the Digital Markets Act, we can already, after a couple of months, see the fruits of it. Just last Friday, we saw that Epic opened its own mobile app store. This would not have happened without the Digital Market Act legislation in the EU. We also see that there are alternatives on iOS systems. We have alternative payment systems. We have totally different distribution channels. This is a huge opening for competition and for a lot of new players to have their fair share in it. But we also kind of need to continue to make sure that under the Digital Services Act, we have a safer online environment, and here minor protection online will remain an issue. And we want to work with the sectors, including yours, of course, to kind of, build on the Digital Services Act, have the right guidelines to have, a minor protective space, have in the future age verification systems that are harmonized in the EU so that we build together that safer online environment. And the final point I want to make is connectivity. Whilst we are in Europe rolling out a 5G, we are already looking ahead at 6G. And that will multiply your technical possibilities, amongst other fields, in developing extended reality experiences. We are conducting with the industry a joint initiative to develop technology capacities for 6G systems as a basis for future digital services towards 2030. And that's key not to forget, because also 6G will be part of many revolutions that you will showcase here in Cologne over the coming years. And I hope you see that as a contribution from our side. But as Anne was saying, we are at a turning point, at one of the political turning points that we have every 5 years after European Parliament elections in Europe. So what can I give you as an indication of what will be the next Commission be doing? I think some very good news for the sector, frankly, because what is already clear from the political guidelines that the future president of the Commission, who is already current president, Madame von der Leyen, has clearly indicated that it will be absolutely clear that we will be a very strong enforcer of the rules that we have adopted. And this will be a very active kind of agenda of enforcement, where we are a partner also for the players, a partner for the stakeholders and for the business to help them to equip themselves for a fruitful enforcement of the rules, so that also the rules can protect them and not only be seen as a burden and enable possibilities, including innovation. The second point I want to make is that it's very clear that the next Commission will be about competitiveness of Europe. This is a very big promise. This is a promise for innovation. This is a promise for entrepreneurship. This is about AI leadership of Europe. This is about taking our data in our hands and making out of it a data union so that we can use it for the best purposes. There are ideas like, really kind of giving the startup scene a boost and supporting entrepreneurship in Europe, and have always an SME competitive test in mind. So the ingredients are there for a very fruitful debate in the coming years, also for the video game sector, to really capture the potential, to grow further, to develop further in Europe. It is true that we do not yet know the full kind of personnel of the next Commission. I do not yet know who will be the Commissioner I will be having the chance to advise and to support in the next mandate. But what is clear, that is there is an expectation that video games will remain on the radar of our political agenda, and that I can promise that I will make my contribution, that this is for sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Renate, for that insight, very useful insight. I saw Henrik applauded also when you mentioned the Epic Store as well. So I think we got a really good overview of what's been achieved and what's next. So with this, you're also a little bit setting the scene for this panel discussion. I will now turn to our panelists. We have a large panel, an unusually large panel, which is great, but that also brings with it a little bit of challenges. So I will ask you to keep a 2.5 limit at most of your answers. So first, to kick this off, I'll turn to you, Henrik. Perhaps you can begin and tell us a little bit where game development starts in Europe. So EDGF publishes great data every year. You're tracking the studios across Europe, how many they are, etc. There are more than 5,000 European studios today. Many of them are SMEs. So this means you really have a privileged position to see where in Europe we have large and really dynamic game hubs that can contribute to that innovation, but they may need a little bit of support. So question to you, why do you tell us a little bit where these are, and why do you think that these countries or region in particular are so good at developing games?
Yeah, thanks.
And also, if you want to react very briefly on anything that Renate said, please go ahead.
Yes, of course. Of course, you mentioned the Epic Store. I think that this is really, really important, that we go against kind of monopolistic behavior and so on, and that it's not only including kind of fair competition environment, but we also in a world where, of disinformation and all this, where I think it's also very important that we take more accountability and get those companies to be more accountable for what's really going on, because it's not just economically and entertainment, it's also very much cultural, right? And in many debates, I think this is something we forget. I'm very glad that it doesn't seem that we forget it here, right? Because in my opinion, we are also here as game developers to also help and do our part to save the world in a way, as in liberal democracies, rule of law, and so on, and find narratives there. But to answer your question, one of the things is basically to a degree everywhere, which has not been the case for all the time, but we've been seeing ecosystems, hubs, incubators basically popping up all over Europe. So we have, if we go back in history, we have the traditional centers in the UK, in France, to a degree in Germany, in Nordic countries and so on. But especially in the last couple of years, a lot of other countries basically saw that opportunity. I want to point out a couple of some. If you go to the Baltic region, Estonia has a very vibrant startup scene, some of them also into games, of course. And we see that there's a lot of stuff happening, not only on games themselves, but also adjacent technology, which is really interesting. Then I think one of the most vibrant ones is Poland. This is, I had the pleasure to see some of the early, international approaches from Polish game companies more than 20 years ago, and seeing that market grow and grow and grow in significant culturally, right? We have this anecdote that the president of Poland a couple of years ago gave The Witcher as a present to other politicians, right? 20 years ago, people would have thought, that's insane, right? So this is really changing how we see games and the importance of it. And Poland also a couple of years ago had a big surge in companies from the games going into the stock market. That's cooled down. I think we're all aware of what's happened in tech and stock markets the last couple of years, but we still see that there's a lot of companies going there and also international ones. How do they do this? And this is not just Poland. I think it's on the one hand side, working with universities is very key, right? This is where people are excited. Also this idea of getting people to be interested to study the MINT kind of courses, right? Games are, and I don't want this just to be taken out of context, is kind of the beginner's entry, right? The entry drug to a degree to technology. And we just discussed briefly before about space, right? And space is not just about tech, it's also about the vision of humankind going and moving forward, right? So again, I think the countries are really doing well who understand to bring technology, business, and the cultural side together.
Thank you, Henrik. That's great insight. And also, I think what you said on, it's not just about developing games in these hubs that you track and see across Europe, but it's also the adjacent technologies as well. That's really important. Thank you for that insight, Henrik. Now, Mats, Sweden. Now, Henrik did not mention Sweden, but Sweden is one of the hubs that we know is. They have a lot of game developers. It's a lot of people proportionally working in the industry. And some of the most successful games worldwide are made in Sweden. Elsewhere, of course, but there is a particular concentration perhaps there. So you're the chair of the Cultural Affairs Committee in the Parliament. And I understand that you have recently put forward a long-term strategy. I think it's even a 9 or 10-year long-term strategy to support the creative sectors, including games. This is quite big news. So can you tell us a little bit what's in that for games in particular?
Yes, absolutely. There was a 10-year strategy adopted by the Parliament in June from a governmental proposal. And then a survey that has been done for a couple of years now. So it's the background is, of course, what you said about the gaming industry, that Sweden has been a leading nation in gaming industry, but not only in gaming, but in the whole cultural and creative.
Are we down on mic?
Yeah. I hope my voice is coming through. But whole culture and creative industry for a long time. I mean, Sweden has been a movie country with Ingmar Bergman, and also in music and design and so on. And we want to keep that position and strengthen the position. We have a 10-year vision for 2033. Sweden will be even stronger in our position, leading position in the creative industries. That's the vision, and the strategy involves 6 areas, kind of different kinds of areas that we will focus on. We'll focus on, for example, better statistics, so we can follow up. We're doing a first follow-up in 2 years. We will have focus on skills and talents for the whole industry. Also reduce obstacles like complex rules and so on. And there's also some kinds of aids and support for these industries and these enterprises and companies within the industry. And if you think why is Sweden has this position, that's a trickier question. But I think something of what you said goes for Sweden. We have we're early adopters in the ICT, for example, with broadband for all companies in the main city areas from the beginning, more or less. And we're also quite good in design and culture. We educate school children in municipal, local authority level. In a good way, I think. So yeah, we're looking forward. This is brand new, so we will see how it's works.
Adopted. It's there. It will happen.
Yeah, it will happen now.
Okay, great. No, great insight. We're looking forward to learning more about that and see how it will.
Will be interesting.
Burst even more. So interesting around better statistics. Really important if you want to measure the value of IP-intensive industries, for instance. So. Skills and talent coming back. So thank you for that insight. Now let's move to the highest spheres. So Nick, the European Space Agency and video game collaboration is something that has attracted quite a bit of visibility. I think for those that attended the political opening of Gamescom last year, you remember astronaut Samantha Cristoforetti, who were at the last year's Gamescom and talked about how games are used to prepare for space mission, for instance. So I'm really excited to have you with us here today, and probably many in the audience are also curious to understand and hear about why the European Space Agency is working with the video game sector, and what type of partnership are in place, and what does these bring to the European Space Agency. So. Yeah. Lots of stuff there.
Okay. Yeah. 2.5 minutes. Okay.
2.5 minutes. Yes.
Yeah. So Samantha's one of our stars, the astronaut. In fact, this is our 3rd year here at Gamescom. The first time we were here, she'd taken the Gamescom flag up to the International Space Station and did a broadcast from there, if you recall. So those who were here 2 years back, we get a lot out of it. One thing that's, I was talking to our HR recruitment lead this morning as we came in. So it's very visible. We can see the extra LinkedIn connections. We can see the website visits. We can see the interest which is stimulated from just being here and mixing with the community which is here. So we're getting something very directly useful out of this. Partly because there's quite a similarity in the kind of skills that we're interested in. To bring into the space industry, and the kind of skills which you already have represented in the video sector, and indeed in the players. So half of the population is are users or players of video games, but it's the right half. It's the half that we want to recruit from. That's the talent pool that we're looking for. We have some quite explicit partnership relationships with some of the major games players. I think our first one was with Kerbal. And the Kerbal Space Program, there's a whole load that you can build a real Ariane 5 rocket to an ESA design there. You can build the Bepi Colombo spacecraft, which will take you to Mercury, or you can go land on. These are real engineering designs which came from ESA through a partnership that we made, and they coded them into the gameplay. We've done similar things. I saw the Keoken are out there on the floor there. There's a Mars mission game there about resource management on Mars, which they build with consultancy help from ESA. We did something similar with Arach. If you want to imagine yourself running a space agency and trying to get to Mars, You can simulate all of the boardroom meetings and the procurement discussions and the budget and the governance. No, it's not that. It's the engineering design discussions, which would lead you to actually being able to launch a spacecraft to get to Mars. And the most recent one is with Epic. It's called Lunar Horizons. Look it up when you get back. And this is about building a moon base. And that's in the Fortnite environment. Right, and that's, again, it's a real architectural design of a lunar habitat, which is in planning, and in the next 5 years, we're going to have astronauts walking on the moon, we hope. They're going to have to build a habitat. Well, we can do it in the gameplay right now. So these are the kind of, that kind of inspirational stuff which is coming from the exploration program is feeding directly into the games, and everybody loves a space game, right? And then going in the other direction, we're drawing out, I mentioned the skills and the talent, but we're also drawing out a lot of the technical capability which is pioneered in the games industry, about how to engage between human and machine. That's a lot of the stuff that we have to do in the space industry. We train our astronauts in virtual reality, right? Just down the road, just down by Cologne Airport, the European Astronaut Center, it's where all of Europe's astronauts are trained. And how do they learn how to operate the International Space Station? They put on the visor, no? And we teach them to operate the controls. We have a robotics and a haptics lab. We have a lot of this kind of stuff about autonomy, about how to remotely operate machinery and vehicles, because if your machinery is in space, you need to be able to handle a joystick, right? All of those kind of capabilities are coming out of the games industry. That's where it's being pioneered. A lot of the stuff which is about network communication, about multiplayer, multi-user engagement over telecoms. One of the biggest bits of satellite infrastructure is telecom infrastructure. It's satellite communication. It used to be sports bars and everybody watching football in the bar, right? But now it's broadband connectivity. It's 5G. Yeah. And if you want a very short, laggy connection, the fastest connection is not going through a fiber from one side of the Earth to the other. You go out through free space over laser and you come back down again, right? Bounce it over the satellites if you want to bring your lag down, bring your latency down. Yeah. Or again, the other direction, if you want to control something on the moon, we need to understand how to deal with 2.5 seconds of latency. And I'm hoping somebody in this room can tell me how to do that.
Excellent. And now we're at 2.5 minutes, being on the 2.5 seconds of latency. But Nick, thank you for that. And it's probably really, really important to understand also how game technology, how video games are used in completely different areas. Because when you think about video games, you think about play, you think about entertainment. Of course, it's all that. But I think we're increasingly now seeing that it's so much more. So great to have that insight to better understand how you guys are working. Would love to see that base in Cologne. So thank you for that. I just wanted to mention that the UK trade body for video games, UKI, they released actually a report last year on game technology spillover, and it concluded that it contributed to 1.3 billion in revenue and supported over 10,000 jobs. So it's more than just a nice to have. It's starting to become really an economic important impact. So with this, moving forward with our topics, because we have many exciting topics here today. We have spoken about how games can support other complex, demanding areas such as space, the spillover effect, why certain regions are hubs, the importance of skills and training has come across quite a few times. But what about digital champions, Per? Do we need a European Meta or Alibaba in games? I know this is a topic that you have been thinking quite a lot of. So who are they in Europe? Do we need to do the same thing as tech? 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Anne. I don't know about thinking hard or good, but at least long. But first, I'd like to say that we also share this sense of wonder, the fascination of the unknown? Isn't that a big part of the appeal of games, to explore and find new worlds? Isn't that also something that we share? So just wanted to add that. And also thank you to Renata Nicolai for mentioning the competitiveness of the European SMEs, because I think these are the real digital champions. And you mentioned, why don't we have a European Alibaba? Why don't we have a European, did you say Google? Or Meta? Yeah, why don't, like, raise your hand if you've ever been in that conversation. Why don't we have a European Meta or Google or, right. It's tiring, right? We're looking in the wrong places for the digital champions. We cannot copy the success formula of somebody else. We don't have the huge markets, consumer markets in Asia. We don't have the investor money in Silicon Valley. And by the way, a lot of that investor money is public money from the US federal government over decades and decades. I don't know that any amount of European taxpayer money can buy a European Alibaba. Instead, can we look at what we have? I mean, look around. We have thousands of creative SMEs, and games is just one example, and they are digital, and they focus on creative expression, they focus on diversity, it comes from high quality, high education, skills. So somebody would call these European values, the list I just ranted. Some of them would call these European values. And Sweden, I'll take this example, in the last decade we grew from 1 billion turnover to 8 billion turnover in the exports of the Swedish games. That's 700% increase in a decade. We did that with very little added use of the planet's limited resources. So it's also green growth, and it's green growth not only because it's digital, but also because it's immaterial value creation. Yes, we do intellectual property. So this is a great promise for the future. The creative SMEs may not be able to save the world, but we can contribute. Oh, and another thing, IP is great because it travels. This, ladies and gentlemen, is an enchanted diamond sword. I know you want it. I paid 30 euros for this, but I think you can get the plastic sword from a street vendor for like 3 euros. So it's a 10-time value, which is only the IP.
Does it light up?
Watch it.
Oh.
And I don't see anyone paying 30 euros for Alibaba swords.
Thank you, Per. Well, that's great. If anybody else would like to use the sword then you're welcome. Yeah. No, but thanks. I think that was a good waking up call a little bit, where we should be looking, because we do have this SME structure in Europe, and we were just discussing with Nick before this panel. It's very similar to what the ESA has a lot. There are lots of European SMEs in space technology, etc. And we have learned about your incredible incubator programs supporting those as well. Axel, now it's your turn. 2.5 minutes, but I'll ask the question first. Yeah. So you have just entered a new European Parliament for 5 years, and many big files were adopted during the past 5 years. I think that Business Europe counted some 850 new legislation adopted during this mandate, among others, the AI Act, the Data Act, the DSA, the DMA, much of what Renate has mentioned. Of course, not everything applies to games, and much of it also aims, of course, to drive competitiveness in Europe. So this sector, of course, spent a lot of time to understand how these regulations will apply to us, etc. And it's possible that the sector feel that it may need a little bit of regulatory break, and see that the guidelines that Renate mentioned that points to education, skills, STEM, competitiveness is probably a welcome breathing space there. So can you talk a little bit about the vision, what the EPP will have for the next? It's the biggest group in the European Parliament. Are you thinking on innovation, investment, etc., from that perspective?
Thanks, and also thank you for this quite optimistic mood here around. So, of course, we are focusing always in what is left, so what we need to do in the upcoming mandate. And this is something where I would say we now have to list and to think about what is missing. So far, we concentrated too much on regulation instead of coming with an overall strategy in supporting companies or motivating also some industries and so on. And this is now the missing link, I would say, what Renate has mentioned. And we are all in this kind of spirit now in saying now competitiveness and investments and innovation should be on the top of the list. And because we have done a lot of regulation and now it's time, and I'm using an expression what I learned from Renate, filling everything with life. And meaning also to get rid of everything what is a burden. And so I still would like to see that we might also revise as soon as possible some of the new elements what we have achieved last mandate, because time is running, problems might be different, and here we have to react. And we shouldn't be a kind of a very ponderous legislator at the end. So, but meaning it's obvious we need to lead Europe to, if we would like to keep prosperity and wealth and so on, then we need to have investments, and also we need to come to competitiveness. And how to achieve this. And this is what we are thinking, and starting, of course, with the, let's say, headline of better lawmaking. So trying to avoid overlapping issues or everything what might lead to legal uncertainty. Also reducing burdens for especially SMEs. Because the biggest one, and if we are looking to risk-based approaches here, the biggest one, they can always deal with these, but the smallest one or smaller ones not. So here we need to have probably different layers of approaches. And of course, when we are coming to the AI Act, for instance, we need to make sure that we have only one interpretation throughout the EU, and not what we have done wrongly from my point of view with the GDPR, the data protection regulation, where every member state is interpreting the rules differently, although we have regulation on board. So, and sometimes in some member states, I would say the purpose of free flow of data is missing. They are just focusing on protecting. And this is also something what we need to make differently. And better lawmaking is one thing, but also digital enforcement. Of course, we need here kind of, also structurally, we need to renew ourselves a bit, that we have now one commissioner, hopefully for digital and pushing this forward. That we have this digital enforcement, so meaning looking at everything what might be not in a correct wording or overlapping on this situation. We need also this kind of clear digital strategy. And this, for me, is also something where we should go beyond this. I'm sorry for this, Mats, but for these national approaches, I still think we need a European approach, European projects. And if every member state is just focusing on its own, we are not coming to a kind of an Alibaba situation where we should probably create one. And this is something also digital investment. I'm still thinking about that on the European level we should more spend than 20 billion instead of 2-point-something billion, and also creating a kind of a digital tech fund where we can bring in, let's say, 200 billion, and then trying to create here more and more of this competitiveness of the investments, and coming forward like this. Probably I exaggerated.
No,
already.
it's good. It's good, but I'll stop you now. It's a lot of twos. It's the 2 billions, it's the 20 billions, and 202.5. Sorry, I'm just. It's a lot of twos, but no, thank you. And I think better lawmaking, enforcement is part of that. SMEs, capabilities. Clear digital strategy, and European projects. So that's of course important. You also spoke about the Digital Tech Fund. Maybe that can be a digital and creative tech fund to get the word creative in there. But following this, so you specifically mentioned the member states now, Axel. Yeah. I think on a separate note, I think, did you give a scope that the GDPR may be revised? No?
Yes, we do. We just mentioned also in the program already, we would like to see more personal data processed, and this would mean we have to modernize the GDPR. And the GDPR, so far, how we are dealing with this, it's important, there's no doubt, but how we are doing this, this could be better, and we need to process also more personal data without infringing the fundamental rights of our citizens. And there are ways, but this is not something other parts of the Commission are a little bit more resistant in trying to open the GDPR. They see a kind of a horror show if we are just opening these. I would say we need to come forward. We need to do here more. We can simplify our lives also in reducing some burdens there. But we need to have the courage, the will, the political will in coming to a situation where we have a kind of a more prosperous digital environment.
Thank you, Axel. Wow, we're learning lots of things here today. Thank you for that political, I would say, motivation on those points. It will be an exciting next 5 years, I think. Oh, yes. So you mentioned the member states. Then I got so excited about the GDPR point that Axel mentioned. So I didn't follow up with you, Mats, here. So, do you think member states, Mats, are ready to be involved in a common digital creative strategy? Can education skills, development talent pipeline be part of that? Often national competence, but maybe there are sweet spots in which we can do big and ambitious projects. So,
with national level. Yes, I think so. First, I would say also that talking about innovation and competitiveness, the strategy for creative and cultural
industries.
Industries, thank you. Is of course that's of course the target, to be competitive and innovative, and I think. We need those kind of strategies on the EU level, but we need it also on national level as well as local level. So that's not a problem. And of course, we need to reduce the obstacles, but also about the regulations. I think it's important that. Some kind of regulation. We need some kind of regulation, and it should be on the focus on the EU level, because we need it's the same rules in all over the EU, and we need clear rules also. That's also important, that we don't change it every year or so. But some regulation needs also to point out the direction for the innovation. I mean, we have some global problem with climate and democracy and so on, and we want industry go on the right direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
So national level certain things, and we can also identify European projects where they are needed. Henrik, you kicked off this panel debate. On the basis of what we're having, etc. Can we be a little bit more ambitious? So if we look at what more can be done, you have now heard various, institutions, politicians, etc., talking about their vision. What do you think can be done in order to be even better for this sector?
No, I think I mentioned already that we should do our part to basically save the world, right? So I think that's to a degree, or should be quite ambitious, and should be a calling to all of us. And how we do this, and one thing I want to add to what Axel was just saying, right? We protect the data of our population quite a bit, but then we let them be exposed to misinformation and crazy stuff in my book from all kinds of platforms which are not necessarily based in Europe, right? So I think that is something which we have to get a better balance, to say the least. So this is something where I think we have to get ambitious, not overprotective as in isolate us, but we have to get people to also adhere to our rules, just to say it very plainly, right? And on the other hand, you know, the cultural aspect we talked about, and you know, the 200 billion sounds very good to me, right? Adding the creative. So ultimately, I very much believe in, you know, the future, ideas of the future, narratives. You know, why do we wake up in the morning? And so ultimately this drive of having these future ideas again, and I think Europe is, we have to have a vision really, right, on who we want to be and want to stay, and not just over-regulated to get that point, but get people to again believe in the idea of Europe. And it's not only about Europe, about these values, and then ideally, you know, not export them through violent means throughout the world. That's not the message, but, you know, ultimately export our culture and really double down on this. And I think so many other key points were already mentioned, why this is technology-wise, it's good, it's for our own people, it's good, and so on. But ultimately, it's about to have a positive trajectory, if we talk about sci-fi for the next 100 years, where it's about a free society of people who, and when we talk about AI, probably not everybody is working in 50 years anymore, right? What are these people doing? Are they just consuming TikToks the whole day and get completely brainwashed in a way? Or are they also experience meaningful culture of togetherness and social and so on? Yeah. So I think we have to not double down, but 200 billion down on that idea of tech culture becoming one. And becoming a true meaningful way of how we can also live our lives and still have meaningful connections. If that's
Thank you. That was
ambitious enough.
That was a grand vision, but an important vision. I think Per also touched on that a little bit, with also how games can maybe save the planet as well through their immaterial value. Renata, we're moving towards the end of this panel discussion. So you started off with giving us some insight what may lie ahead, and also a very good indication on what the Commission has achieved and the EU has achieved in the past mandate. So you've now heard everybody speaking here. You've also heard from industry. Is there anything you would like to react to what you have been hearing on the panel discussion so far? You don't need to react to the revision of the GDPR. But
I fully support. Yeah. I fully support, but Axel knows that. I'm quite thrilled by the positive spirit in the panel, and that's also such an expression of what the Gamescom is about. And I think that's for me a very important takeaway from my this year's time at the Gamescom, and also from hearing from the sector and also the national perspective. Because sometimes I think we underestimate the impact Europe has in the world. We are living in difficult geopolitical times, and digital sovereignty is an important topic. And when we talk about competitiveness, it has also to be kind of embedded in a more strategic autonomy, because that's, of course, you know, the reality around us. But on the other hand, you know, we are living here a community, a huge, vast community. And I very much like to echo what was said around the table, that, you know, we have a very valuable contribution to make as Europe because of who we are, because of the cultural kind of heritage we represent and the values we stand for. And I think that's, you know, what we should build on. And I think we also shouldn't underestimate the impact that we can have if we get our act together and do it in a, you know, single market vision. Because that's always when we are good. When we show we have influenced markets in the world with our approaches, just by, you know, being front runners or being steadfast in our kind of vision. With GDPR even, we kind of revolutionized the world. I mean, more than, you know, every region in the world has copied the principles of it. And maybe with the AI Act it will be similar. And I'm not talking only about regulation. I'm talking about the creative kind of minds and the creative kind of power that comes from a sector like the video games sector. So what I also take away from it is that funding is going to be an important aspect for the future. And in the next years, we will have a very important debate where national kind of perspectives will come in as well on the annual budget, the several years annual, multi-annual budget of the European Union. And we have to make sure that we don't forget the importance, the cultural and the economic importance of the creative sector, including the video games sector. And I think we all here around the panel and probably at Gamescom have an interest in showcasing the big contribution it already makes across kind of strands to other sectors, but also within the sector, because it has an important societal value as much as an economic value. And I think to spell that out more clearly, I think will help us also to have a very strong position in that difficult debate, because we will compete against many other important aspects, security aspects, geopolitical kind of aspects, and of course also other industrial sectors that will want to have support. But I think it's a really important moment of a huge potential for the EU. If we kind of, grab this, if we actually, instead of saying, oh, we don't have a Meta, we don't have an Alibaba, to actually say, yeah, but we have a potential with AI and with the kind of innovation packages and with the kind of measures at the national level, at the EU level. If we bang our heads together, build partnership and ecosystems around kind of places where you have talent from universities, you have startup scene, and you kind of, bind it together, I think, there's a potential prosperous future also in this sector, and that's what I would hope.
Excellent. That was a very positive sum up remarks, Renata. We have 50 seconds left, so now we're getting really stressed. So I had prepared this sort of short summary from the panel. Because of the large panel, we're unfortunately not going to be able to take Q&As live, but please contact panelists afterwards if you would like to ask questions. Perhaps one key takeaway that I think we have seen across all the debates is that competitiveness and innovation cannot happen if we don't invest in the people and in the skills. And by doing this, we also see this huge impact on games and on society and maybe saving the world, as you said, Hendrik. With this, thank you very much for having listened to us, and an applause for the panelists. Thank you.